Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Agency Advantage podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Today on the podcast, we're going to talk about potential red flags that you might see in the job description and in the whole hiring process. So, the first one of these is if you come across a job that has a really vague job description, there could be potentially a couple of things going on here. One, there might be scope creep. So, it says something like a project manager, but it gives really vague kind of what you're actually going to be project managing, for example. And it might be that you're basically the general dog's body and you kind of do everything. Oftentimes, the job description does come from an HR template, but I think when the hiring manager makes quite a lot of changes and they know what they want, I think it shows that they have quite a lot of persuasion and they have a lot of input into the job description. To me, that shows that they're clear on what they want, they're clear on the gaps, they're clear on what needs to be done. If they're using the HR template, then that's a little bit of a red flag for me because that means that they're not very clear on their strategy or what they want, what they need to achieve and things like that. So that can look like maybe the hiring manager is a little bit indecisive, maybe it's a bit of chaos internally. It can mean several things. If you see any wording in the job description around fast-paced environment, wearing many hats, rock star, we're looking for a self-starter, this says to me a few things. First of all, it says that there's absolutely no onboarding, no training. You're going to have to hit the ground running, which might sound good. It might, but in reality, that just means that you're going to be absolutely overworked. You're probably going to end up with burnout, and maybe half the team is already burnt out. Fast-paced environment is code for absolute chaos in the workplace. Wearing many hats, that means that you're going to have to be the cleaner, the project manager. You're probably going to have to do a load of admin. You might have to be the medical director as well. This is really a red flag kind of terminology for me. And then when you get to the interview stage, I've been working with quite a few candidates lately who've had multiple interview stages. I'm not talking 3, even 4. I'm talking like 5+ interview rounds. And this to me, it looks really indecisive. And it shows that the hiring manager maybe doesn't have as much power and influence internally. And if you think about it, that hiring manager is going to be your boss. And you need your boss to know how to convince the leadership team to give you a promotion, to support you, to be the voice at the leadership table. And if there's multiple interview rounds, then that kind of tells me that the hiring manager doesn't have much power, it may be indecisive, is quite low down on the food chain. And I don't know how comfortable I would be with that. But sometimes it can show that they're really indecisive. Maybe they need the cross-functional team to say, yes, this person's fine. They need their boss to say this person is fine. They need their boss's boss to make a decision. Ultimately, the hiring manager and probably some VP, between the two of them, need to make the decision. And why are they bringing in 10 other stakeholders to help them make that decision? That just looks really indecisive, and like they don't know what they want, and they're frightened to make a decision. And I don't know if I want someone like that as my boss. They're not going to be backing you in rooms where you're not present and things like that. And this is a classic. You should be able to, there are 2 questions that I think you should be able to ask either the HR person or the hiring manager. One of them is, why is this position still open? I think this question is absolutely critical. And if they don't answer or they don't give you a very good answer, then it could mean that person just quit on the spot because they were burnt out or they fired somebody. All of these things are a little bit red flags for me. Find out why the person who filled the role isn't there. I think that will give you a really good clue as to kind of how the company operates and how that team operates. The other one is you should also be able to ask what the salary band is so that you know later on for negotiations, like what you're working with. And also, even if it's worth you interviewing, because if the salary band is really low, then you don't even, maybe it's not even worth wasting your time interviewing Well, it really depends because I do see interviewing as a way of networking. So even if the job that you're going for isn't the one you want, like if you have a really good interview, then they might come and think of you for another more senior role and things like that. If the salary band is not clear, then this is also a little bit of a red flag because it might mean that they're going to try and lowball you later and offer you a really low offer. Because one thing I always say to people is look at the job description, don't look at the title, because one company's associate director is basically like an admin person. Another company's associate director could be like, you know, one before the VP. It really depends on the company. So I think looking at the title without looking at everything in context, like the leadership requirements in the job description, are you going to be line managing, things like that, that will give you an indication of the seniority rather than the job title itself. So yeah, you really want to understand what kind of salary band you're working with, and then you can start, if you do get an offer later on, you can have these kind of negotiation discussions and you have all the information you need. If they're not able to give you those, then that's a bit of a red flag for me. And this is a classic, but ghosting during the interview process. I don't know what's happened like in the last 5 years. I think it's really a hiring manager's market. There are a lot of candidates, a lot of people out there looking for jobs. And I think because of that, there's this sense that people can pick and choose who they want and they have all the power. But that to me doesn't mean that you can ghost people, not give them updates on how the process is going, what the next steps are, and things like that. But I've been working with some candidates who are literally interviewing for 3 months and they're not hearing anything for months about whether they are going through to the next stage or what the process even is and when they can expect to get answers. They're just being completely ghosted either by the HR or the hiring manager. And I just think that's not on, because if you think about it, you might have a really amazing candidate and you're actually going to weed out the amazing candidate because they won't wait for you to sort yourself out. And that not only impacts your current hiring process, but I've had bad experiences where I won't even apply for that whole company. So you're really losing some potential great people that could come and work in your company and really make an impact. So just consider the candidate's time, as your hiring manager, just consider the investment that they've put into your hiring process, but also you're actually filtering out, unfortunately, the best candidates, and then you might be left with the B players. One thing that I wanted to touch on as well is I was working with somebody who was doing really well. She really liked the company. And then she had an interview with a VP and they were just saying some things that were a little bit of a red flag. She had incredible English, absolutely impeccable English, very impressive. A non-native English speaker, but was a medical writer and her English was exceptional. And when it came to the VP interview, they made a few comments that kind of put her off about her language ability and things like that. It was almost a little bit hinting into the immigration status and touching on some pretty iffy topics. I think that if you see anything around discrimination, sexism, microaggressive language, then to me, that is just, I wouldn't even want to move forward with that because that says a lot about the attitudes of the people internally. And if the company if anyone in the interview process mentions, we're a family, that is an absolute, you're expected to be there 24/7 like you would your own family. And no, I'm sorry, no job is worth that. So those are my absolute red flags to look for in the whole hiring process, from the kind of scanning the job description through to the interview. I hope you liked this episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next week.